We'll move on then. A compatriot of his, Joao Gomes, 23 years of age, obviously at Wolves at the moment, so has a bit of Premier League experience under his belt as well, which is handy. Has also been linked to Liverpool in the last few weeks as well. 8 Brazil caps, which is more than Ederson, which I think is an interesting little point of reference in all of this too. In terms of his pathway, his progression to where he is now, what's that been like? Has that been more sort of conventional, if you like?
In a way, yeah. So Gomez started playing professionally for Flamengo and broke into the team very quickly and ended up playing in the Copa Libertadores final in 2022. They beat Paranaense 1-0 in that final. He started the game. He was a stalwart in that team that were the best team on the continent. That was their second title in 4 years. And they were winning leagues in Brazil. He won pretty much everything in Brazil, you know. And at that stage, we're talking about like a 20, 21-year-old. So impressive CV because it's obviously beyond competitive to break into those teams in Brazil. I think people forget, you know, we talk about the argument of getting into the international team. There's 215 million people in Brazil and they're all absolutely bonkers about football. And because of the economics of the country as well, and you know the whole sort of favela fairy tale, which to an extent is true, you have millions of these kids that grow up and it's football or not much else, you know. So to get to that level of South American football is incredible for them after the World Cup. That is the biggest game on the planet, the Libertadores final. And then he got his move, didn't he? Came to Europe. And last season, obviously, became one of the first names on the team sheet with Wolves. So unlike, say, a Rios or even Ederson, who I didn't mention, had a few loan spells in Brazil, then went to Salernitana, then went on to Atalanta. It's been a more simple path for him so far. But at the same time, I don't know if you saw about a week ago, Wolves themselves brought out a mini documentary on Joao Gomes. And for example, the fact that he has like a stammer or a stutter, I was never aware of that. And I think it only speaks to his character, you know, because it's just another challenge to deal with, as if growing up in Brazil and trying to be the one in a million footballers isn't tricky enough. He's like a pit bull on the pitch, and then off it, he's very calm and obviously had to build a lot of confidence up with that speech impediment. So it's hard to know these people, you know, isn't it, from what you see from the outside? But I thought that was like a really like positive thing about his character. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. I did see that actually, and I thought he came across brilliantly in it as well, as you referenced there. So yeah, credit to him for that and speaking so openly and again superbly on it. I thought it was exceptional. And again, if Liverpool looking for character references, which we so often do when it comes to transfers, the no dickhead policy, the infamous, famous no dickhead policy, it looks like he doesn't tick that box, whichever way
exactly. Yeah, it does. That's always you always run that risk. I suppose you never know who you're getting. I'm sure they did an unbelievable amount of homework on Darwin Núñez, and not to put him in a bad light, but he's a character, isn't he? So
that's to say the least. That is
yeah,
to say
exactly.
the least.
So you never know with these things, and it is a stereotype, but because of maybe the paths in their lives and their careers, you can get more volatile characters coming out of the South American side. You see it when you watch South American football. It's just a completely different culture. So you never know. But Gomez seems, he seems cool as ice, doesn't he? And he seems like a good lad, which is obviously for the dressing room and for people who support the team and want to feel like the team resembles what they're about. It's massive.
Yeah, major positive, as I say, really is. You touched upon his style of play there. What would you sort of describe him as then? We've touched on both the previous two in terms of what they are most naturally. Joao Gomes, I think quite a bit of what he did at Wolves under Gary O'Neill was sort of in a double pivot. Would you say that's a necessity for him, or can he do the lone six stuff?
I think he could do the lone six stuff. I don't worry about him off the ball. He's an absolute pit bull. Like in the top 5 leagues, his blocking stats are in like the 99th percentile. Do you know what I mean? Like, basically, he's blocking the ball more than anyone else in football. And his tackle rate is pretty much up there too. So ball recovery and tackling and blocking. He's just, he's everywhere, covers a lot of ground, never seems to run out of energy, never seems to run out of, I don't want to use the word motivation because obviously at that level, motivation shouldn't be a factor, but you know what I mean? He just does not stop. Simple as that. So he's a proper, I don't want to say last ditch, but if you need last ditch, he's the man. His recovery speed's very good as well. So in terms of the defensive side of things, as a single six, I don't think there's a problem. And we talk about, the stamina, the tackles, the blocks. Liverpool are probably going to be defending more in transition, and he's perfect for that. He's got great qualities for that. Weaknesses perhaps is more the on the ball side, where if you look at the statistics, it's the opposite. In terms of progressing the ball up the pitch, passing the ball forwards, keeping the ball, things like that. The numbers are not good. The sample size is pretty much 1 year, though. 1 year at Wolves, where, it's a different kettle of fish to playing for Liverpool in terms of what you need to do. So take it with a pinch of salt, but he's looked very impressive for Wolves, hasn't he?
No, he has, absolutely. This is one of the links I'm really quite keen on. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of boxes ticked. Not only the fact you can get players out of Wolves, Liverpool have got a track record of doing that as well. We like getting players out of Wolves too, so I think that helps. And what I was really interested in, we won't dwell on it now necessarily, is the fact he was playing the Copa America over some of the names that we've already mentioned. And we're going to mention another one to sort of round off in a moment too. So I thought that was quite telling, given his age and all that sort of stuff as well. So credit to him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, he started all 4 games for Brazil at the Copa, was doing the same thing he does for Wolves, running around like a madman, tackling people. The numbers were the same they were with Wolves. His rate of tackling and getting the ball back for his team is magnificent. He doesn't seem to stop. You can see him sort of internally celebrate those tackles like they're massive things, which I love. I think psychologically it's only a good sign. And like you said, the fact that there's so many names that we're talking about or otherwise, and at the end of the day, the fact that he's getting in ahead of these guys for Brazil says a lot. The fact that he's done it now in the Premier League for a year as well says a lot. He's 5'9", is obviously prowess in the air is pretty non-existent. How important or not that is depends, doesn't it? We've seen the sort of set piece coach phenomenon the last year or two. In particular, Arsenal completely changing their game with how effective they've been at set pieces. So that's maybe one thing. If you think about the transitions as well, and he's maybe the last man back, you wouldn't want him up against one of those proper big, strong number 9s, because he'll get bullied in the air, but on the ground, no issues at all defensively.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, clearly room for improvement in terms of what he does on the ball as well. But as you touched upon, really, playing for Wolves and playing for Liverpool can be stark in terms of the difference. If you had to compare him to anybody, have you got a name for this fella?
Yeah, I thought a bit about Moises Caicedo, who, I remember that first game for Chelsea. Everyone was taking the mick out of him and his performance and all. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the good version of Caicedo, and we all know how much potential he's got and why we were linked with him in the first place. But it's a game based on relentless defensive energy, and amazing tackling, and sort of just that awareness and defensive positioning, just sort of the sweeper, not the centre back sweeper, that sweeper in the middle. And that sort of stamina, will to win that just doesn't really stop. And in a similar sense, the questions might be the size or going forward, what he can give to the team going forward. But like we've touched on, maybe that's not what we're looking for. So
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. There's other big lads in the team that can deal with that sort of stuff, perhaps. But yeah, I think his trajectory is really interesting. It looks like he is destined, potentially set for a move to a bigger club, with all due respect to Wolves, at some point in the future.